workshop, and I'll
update people on rules at the start line. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to be going live very soon. There's still some people logging in to the Zoom. We had about 60, 70 people sign up for it online. So really great numbers. People are coming in as we speak, literally. But we're going to pass over to Ben and Tom now. So without further ado, thanks very much for coming in.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, everybody knows Ben. I'm Tom. So let me explain how we think this is going to work. We have a lot of people on Zoom. This is going to be quite an interactive seminar. We need people in the room and the people on Zoom as well to contribute. We're going to be showing some scenarios and asking for comments from people from the room. I'll go into that in a minute, but I just want to get the briefing done about how the Zoom works before Chris goes. People on Zoom are currently all muted. If somebody on Zoom wants to ask a question, they put their hand up using the hand up button on the Zoom screen. If we see that there's a request to say something from a Zoom person, we shall ask them to unmute, and so they'll be able to talk and everybody will hear what they have to say. And hopefully that way we'll get some sort of order into what otherwise could be chaotic with so many people out there trying to speak at the same time. So that's how it's going to work. Okay, so that's us. This is what we're talking about. Hopefully. No? Not changing. Okay. All right. So who's it for? Well, it's for everybody, basically. All racing sailors. There are no pre-assumed standards of knowledge that anybody has. So everybody can join in. It's for big boats and small boats. It's a pity we don't have more dinghy sailors here because of the big event coming up. But it will be recorded and it will be available on Zoom. Maybe the dinghy sailors are out there. So next one, Ben. Right. So let's just talk about what we're going about the session. Well, first of all, obviously the start is critical to all of you. If you don't get a good start, then your race is half over already. So getting a good position on the start line is critical to your performance during the race. But the start line is a period when the rules are very difficult. The fleet is very congested, more congested than anywhere else in the race course. People are changing course a lot, and it's really essential that you know the rules. So we're going to spend a very short time just summarizing the rules that apply. We hope a lot of you know the rules already, but we're going to be using some scenarios to demonstrate how the rules apply and ask for your feedback and see whether we can get some fun out of it as well. We divided the presentation into upwind starts and downwind starts. They're actually very different in the situations that come up. So the first part of it will be for upwind starts, which is probably 90% of the starts that you have, but we will cover downwind starts as well. We will be looking at illegal propulsion, Rule 42, because certainly in dinghy sailors that applies quite a bit at the start. And because of the event that's coming up at the weekend, we'll say a word or two about illegal propulsion after the start as well, so that everybody understands what it is that the judges will be looking for during the regatta coming up. As I said, we'll look at some common situations and use that as a way of describing the rules. Okay, Ben, so next one. So the upwind starts. Next one. Ooh. No, okay, next one. Right, so very quick summary of the rules. Most of you will know these already. So port keeps clear, windward boat keeps clear, astern on the same tack keeps clear. and the tacking boat keeps clear. And rule 14, which is absolutely critical, damage must be avoided if you can. Now, rules 15 and 16 refer to basically a boat. 15 is a boat acquiring right of way and having to give room, which means time, for the other boat to fulfill its obligations to keep clear. And rule 16 is a right of way boat which is changing course, and they must also give the other boat the opportunity to keep clear. So the rules have really changed quite a lot in this respect over the last few years. The right-of-way boat is quite limited in what it can do. It cannot do anything that is going to cause damage, basically. Rule 17 applies to a boat which is luffing, and we'll go through that in more detail, which does change at the start, so we'll deal with that. Rule 18, which we dealt with last time about rules at the mark, Rule 18 doesn't apply at the start. We'll go into that in more depth. A returning boat, which is OCS, returning to restart, must keep clear of all boats that are starting properly. A boat moving backwards or sideways probably doesn't apply so much in keel boats, but it certainly applies in dinghies where the main may be backed and the boat moving sideways, must keep clear of boats which are starting properly. It's often mentioned in the sailing instructions about boats who have not yet started must keep clear of boats which are starting. It's actually a rule which makes it quite clear that boats which are not yet racing must keep clear of boats which are starting. So although it's mentioned in the sailing instructions, the boat can normally be protested under the rule. And hopefully the race officer is going to apply that rule with the dinghies at the weekend, because we normally see absolute carnage at the start with boats getting in the way of other boats that are trying to start. I mentioned Rule 42 about illegal propulsion, and we'll go into that in more detail in a moment. So, okay, Ben. Right, so first of all, Rule 15 and 16. So if you acquire right of way, maybe you've just tacked from port onto starboard, you must give the other boat the opportunity to keep clear. What does that mean? Well, it very often means that you expect, we as judges would expect the other boat to have made some sort of reaction, to put his helm down or luffed or whatever he has to do to keep clear within a couple of seconds of you acquiring right of way. Or in the second example there, if you're right away and you change course, let's say you're a leeward boat and you luff underneath a windward boat, then we would expect the windward boat to respond in 2 or 3 seconds to your luff. And if we were on the water watching it, we'd be looking for evidence of that, and you've actually moved your tiller or you've moved the wheel. And if you are slow in doing that, then you break the rule. But if you have complied with that and there's contact, then the right-of-way boat, which has changed course, has broken the rule. We'll have some examples of these. I know I'm going quickly through them, but we've got quite a lot to talk about, so I'm rushing it a bit. Okay, so we come to the first scenario. Now let's just talk about how we're going to deal with these. We're going to put some scenarios up. We're going to let you look at them, and then I'm going to ask for comments from the floor or from the Zoom participants as to who wants to comment on who was right and who was wrong, what the rules were that applied, what the obligations of the boats were. And when you've had a go at it, then Ben is going to have a go at it for this first set of scenarios, and he's going to apply it to me in the second set of scenarios.
Okay.
And then Ben and I will talk about it, because there may be different ways of viewing it, and you'll get an insight into the way that the judges will view it. So, okay, so here's the first scenario. The boats have been reaching along the start line before the start, and yellow boat, just before the start, has tacked to go towards the start line. So we want some ideas on who was right and who was wrong, and whether there were any rules broken, and what you think about the situation. So somebody want to have a go at it?
So the point at which the yellow boat acquires right of way, it would almost have been on track to hit the blue boat. So presumably they would have had to have given the blue boat a chance to react.
Right, okay.
The blue boat could bear away easily. You know, she's on port. She must keep clear.
Any more comments?
I don't know if the people at home can hear the discussion. One of them has said that the yellow boat probably had to give some sort of room to the blue boat. Another comment came that the blue boat probably could have borne away and avoided a collision. So we're still having to think about this slide. If anyone at home wants to comment, go ahead. Otherwise, just wait and see. Any other comments?
Actually, when boat two, the yellow boat, wants to do a tag. So on the join, that means he already completed tag. So if he completed tag here at the right, it's apply rule 10. But before completed tag, apply rule 15, the yellow boat should give blue boat a lot of room before he actually do a tag. So I think yellow boat with the sportsmanship, he should take care of this point and then should be penalized.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, shall I talk a little?
Yeah.
I think people are quite clearly seeing the yellow boat here has done something maybe a little bit wrong, taking it too close, her tack. There's a hidden rule in here that we haven't mentioned, and it's not on the heading, which is rule 13, which you'll remember is while you're tacking. A boat that's tacking shall keep clear of a boat that's not tacking. So the yellow boat at the beginning was the leeward boat. Actually, it was a clear ahead boat. Started her tack, went through and became the tacking boat, and while she was tacking, should have kept clear. But at the point at which she reached a close haul course, she now became a starboard boat. The blue boat was still porked, but she became a starboard boat so close to the blue boat that maybe she didn't give the blue boat room to keep clear when she acquired the right of way. And that's the key. So yellow went from being a keep clear boat while she was tacking. She acquired right of way, and at the point she acquired right of way, she must give the blue boat room to keep clear. Now, it's going to come down to a big discussion in the protest hearing, if it got to, whether blue could have borne away. And if it's found that blue could have borne away and avoided contact, then we would say blue broke rule 14 as well, avoiding contact. So that's pretty much it. We have 10, 15 as she acquired right away, then we were in a port starboard situation, but the blue boat probably couldn't, I'd say, in that slide, couldn't do anything. Because, and this is a key thing, the blue boat doesn't have to actually do something until that yellow boat has the right of, is the right of way, is the starboard boat. And that's the key. So blue, technically under the rules of keep clear, doesn't have to do anything until yellow has gained right of way. However, she must do what she can under rule 14.
Okay, well, I think this is actually quite a tricky question, because just going through the situation, at position 1, yellow is clear ahead and very soon becomes leeward boat as she's luffing up. Once yellow has gone through head to, so at that point, blue must keep clear when blue is windward boat. As yellow goes through head to wind, he becomes a tacking boat, and yellow now becomes keep clear boat, and blue is the right of way boat for the time being, while yellow is going through her tack until her tack is completed. Reminder, the tack is completed when the yellow boat is on the close hold course on the starboard tack. So up until that point, blue is the right of way boat. And as soon as the tack is completed, then yellow is a right of way boat. So the tricky question is, should blue have made any attempt to avoid the collision at an earlier stage? And the question is, was there anything she could have done? And I think somebody's made a suggestion that the blue perhaps could have borne away to avoid the collision. I'm not sure that that would avoid the collision. I think if blue bore away, she'd probably collide sooner with the yellow boat. But anyway, that the protest committee would have to decide that. So the principle is that the blue boat should try to avoid the collision if she can. When yellow is in that position too, clearly blue can't avoid the collision because they've already collided. Do you have any comments, Ben?
No, it's a good slide, good interesting slide.
Interesting situation. Yeah. And it shows that it depends on how the case is presented to the protest committee, what the decision is going to be. Probably both boats should be disqualified in this situation.
Easy answer, right. So I hope the people at home heard that discussion. I don't see anyone from home commenting on that, so they're all either very happy with what you said or still sinking in. Shall we move on?
Yeah, so let's move on to the next one. We're going through, these are Rule 10 situations. We'll go into Rule 11 situations and onward through the rules in a minute. Okay, so have a look at this situation. There's a little bit of a description of what was going on to give you a bit more of a clue. We'll give you a minute or two to look at it, or a few seconds to look at it, and then tell us who you think is right and wrong.
Is it yellow last or blue last?
Well, they actually both last.
Blue is still tacking.
Well, I think blue was trying to get out of the way of yellow, taking avoiding action.
No, looks like yellow's about to hit the pin, right? It is. I think if I look at the orientation of the boats in position 1, forget the other positions, if they were sailing normally straight, I think blue would have passed ahead of yellow.
Well, that's what we wrote as a fact, that blue was clearing yellow.
I think for those of you who've got a rule book there, the heading of the slide gives a little bit of a hint as to what we are getting at. Can anyone remember what 16 was? A right-of-way boat. When a right-of-way boat changes course, she should give the other boat room to keep clear. So if blue was getting ahead of yellow, and blue started attack and even went past head to wind, then yellow's still right away, but then yellow luffed up. She changed her course into blue and didn't give blue any room to keep clear. There's nothing blue could have done. And I think that's where the rule 16 on this comes on. So we got a port starboard initially, but we think that blue was clearing yellow, and that's keeping clear. Then blue thinks, right, it's time to go. The gun's gone. I'm going to tack. But what does yellow do? Luffs up, almost, and I hate to use this word. I hate to use it. What a lot of people would call hunting, right? And I hate to use it because it's not in the rule book anymore, anywhere. But as blue tacked, yellow changed her course in such a way that blue was not able to keep clear. And that's a breach of rule 16.1. Again.
No.
You actually intend to cross the collision.
It's almost like yellow
Yellow
luffed
was
up.
trying to stop blue from starting properly.
16.1.
It doesn't matter. The gun, timing of the gun doesn't affect the outcome of this decision.
So again, for those people at home, I don't see any comments here.
hands up?
Any hand? Oh, I've got one hand up actually. Right, let me see if I can ask Adam to
I'm asking to unmute.
unmute himself. Adam, can you hear us?
I can indeed. I'm just wondering whether or not that changes in match racing rules.
Actually, 16.1 applies in match racing rules. It's 16.2, which doesn't apply in match racing. And that's when a boat is dialing down, the America's Cup sort of dial down. They're allowed to do that in match racing. They're not allowed to do that in fleet racing. So does that answer your question? It does apply in match racing. Yeah.
But only downwind.
No, the thing that in match racing is the dial down behind the boat is allowed. It's not allowed in fleet racing.
Yep, understood. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Can you mute yourself again, Adam?
Oh, he's done that very obligingly. Great. Any other comments?
So let me just say something about this. So this is the situation at the pin end of the starting line, where you've got a starboard boat who is trying to prevent this port boat from getting a good start. So it's a situation where the starboard boat, although starboard has right of way, the starboard boat's rights are limited by his inability to change course.
If it helps, I mean, I always try and put it this way. We all know what a checkmate is in the game of chess. There's no way out of a checkmate. In fleet racing, there's no such thing as a checkmate. You cannot checkmate your opposition. Okay, so if you think of it like that, in this situation, yellow is checkmated blue, while blue is clear and turning, yellow change the course and put blue into a checkmate. And that's a breach of rule 16. Shall we go to the next slide?
Go on to the next one.
Excellent.
All right, we're moving on to rule 11 at this point. And then to have the previous slide as well.
Windward leeward.
Windward boats keep clear. Right. So at the start, a windward boat must keep clear, even if she, by doing so, she becomes OCS. So we'll have an example of that in a minute. If the windward boat is keeping clear and the leeward boat alters course towards her, then the leeward boat must give the windward boat room to keep clear. And we'll have an example of that. And if there's a whole row of boats to windward of the windward boat, then a leeward boat altering course towards the boat immediately next to it must take into account the fact that the windward boat probably can't luff because there's somebody right on top of him and right on top of that one and so on. So if the windward boat is unable to keep clear because the proximity of other boats to the boat that he would otherwise luff, then the leeward boat can't exercise his rights as a leeward boat. So let's have a look at some examples. Next one. Right. Okay, so anybody want to comment on that? Right. Okay, so yellow is going to have to luff. It may result in yellow being OCS, but that's yellow is in the wrong place. And if yellow doesn't respond, then blue has got to bear a way to avoid the collision, and blue will protest. In some circumstances, it may not just be a Rule 11 situation, it may be a Rule 2 situation. If yellow is deliberately holding blue down and preventing blue from getting a proper start. The Rule 2, to remind you, is a fair sailing rule. The boat is not complying with fair sailing, then not only can they be disqualified from the race, but their score as a disqualification has to count in the results. So it can't be excluded if there's a discard race in the series. Any comments, Ben? No?
No, we'll come to barging later on, but I think the yellow's quite fairly got into that space, but she's now on a collision course with blue. She's the windward boat and therefore must change her course to keep clear of blue under Rule 11. We all agreed with that? It's quite a common, simple one, that.
Okay, here's a slightly different situation. So who wants to comment on this one?
Okay, so blue has changed course
Yep.
and is forcing yellow up. So since they've changed course, then they don't have the leeward right.
Ben, you want to comment?
Yeah, it's quite a good picture, this, right? Because blue definitely is changed course. As the windward boat, yellow has to keep clear, do what she can. What do you think yellow's going to do in that exact position? Put her helm down. Her stern swings quite close to blue, right? So remember, yellow we know has to keep clear, but in this case, there's a 16, again, a change in course. The right-of-way boat, if she changes course, shall give the other boat room to keep clear. Now, depending on what sort of boats these are, the wave sets, the swell and everything like that, yellow might say, if I put my helm down straight away, I'd actually hit blue. She didn't give me room to keep clear. So it would again come down to a good discussion in the protest room as to whether yellow could have kept clear or whether blue changed her course without giving yellow room to keep clear. Does that make sense?
Yellow didn't respond to blue's luff, therefore we don't see anything here in this picture that shows that she responded.
Sure, so it's still quite difficult with a snapshot on a slide as to know exactly what happened. And like I say, we'd be looking, you know, yellow, if you could have kept clear, you should have done. Certainly if these were big. Yeah, no, my point here is that I think probably on this slide you're right. If they'd have been slightly closer or the orientation of the boat slightly different, maybe yellow would have a case to say, I can't actually turn my boat without hitting my port quarter onto blue. So the idea is that we're recognizing that blue here also must be quite careful when she luffs. Yeah. And a lot of people, we get a lot of protests where the blue boat is shouting like mad, up, 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 up. But actually, when you break it down, you boil it down to the facts, you find that there wasn't much yellow could have done because blue turned her bow too hard up to the yellow boat. We'll come back to that a bit more.
What happens if you have other boats? Yellow.
Next slide, you're one ahead of us.
Shall we move the slide on? Just quick check the mate, see what the, yes.
I would say like we were called people, and then turn. So I think I will let it go yellow sometimes.
The yellow boat doesn't have to respond until you become right away. So if you shout before you establish the overlap,
Well, I mean, I already overlap, and I want to not the yellow, but before I do that, I found the yellow to keep here.
Mm.
So, but that, you know, if you go to the protest room, you go to the protest committee, you say, oh, we're ready.
Well,
I think it's the actions that count rather than the shout.
yeah. I mean, going back in this position, blue perfectly within her rights to go up, 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 and yellow must change her course.
Blue didn't alter course at all, so blue didn't break any rules at all.
On this slide, blue made quite a late change, and we'd have to say, well, how much room was there between the boats?
What's the room for yellow to keep clear?
Yeah, and then maybe I can just illustrate that a little bit extreme. Sorry, Tom.
No, carry on.
I'm going to try and do this without pulling the computer. If the boats are overlapped in that sort of position, can you see now that if yellow, let's do it that way. If blue luffs a little bit, there's really not much yellow can do. Yeah? So blue's going up, 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 shouting, decides to laugh, and yellow goes, well, what can I do? That will be a penalty on the blue. For those at home, if I don't know if this is working, I'm trying to illustrate the boats in this position where the leeward boat changes course to a position the yellow boat, the windward boat can't keep clear. Now, don't get me wrong, the yellow boat has to keep clear if she can, but be aware that the blue boat, the right-of-way boat, does have that limitation that she can't checkmate the other boat.
Well, let me just, the definition of a boat keeping clear is that the right-of-way boat can alter course in either direction without there immediately being contact. That's the definition in the rules. So there has to be, we call it wiggle room. There has to be wiggle room for the right-of-way boat to be able to wiggle and not contact the give-way boat, keep clear boat.
I don't know if the people at home saw that, but we'll go on. One more question, yeah? Yeah. Has altered course.
On a straight line for the start line.
But from one, she was a bit more borne away, and then she's tightened up.
From one.
That's the key.
Yellow has actually borne away as well to try to avoid being over.
Okay, let's just keep going. We can come back to these when we have some time later. Yeah, this is getting more interesting.
Right, so we should have said that this is before the start. The starting signal has not yet gone in either of these positions. So have a look at the situation and see what sort of comments you come up with.
That's two. This is blue at 1. She gets a nice leeward hook, and that's her at 2. Whereas these guys are all at 1 here and 2 there.
The blue is going faster than the 3 boats. Blue has established an overlap from leeward and astern, but because we'll deal with that in a moment. And blue is laughing up on yellow. So what does anybody think?
So a comment here in the room was that the yellow boat can't go up because of the green and the grey one, the green and the grey one. What do we think?
Right?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? But yeah.
So I would say that the yellow, green and grey we should still try to respond, but they probably realistically can't.
I think that's a good answer. So blue has got to give more room and more time to let all of them get out of the way. If the hail is passed along the line from yellow to grey, grey doesn't do anything about it, then grey is likely to find himself in trouble.
Yeah. It's interesting. So the yellow boat really is in the middle there and can't do much until they've passed the word on to the green, and the green says, well, I can't do much. And the green starts hassling the grey boat, saying, you better come up because we got a boat 4 down or 3 down or two below us.
So Eastman has to give room for the boat to windward them to respond. But if the most windward boat doesn't respond, then the windward boat's in trouble.
Okay. The rule 15, remember rule 15 was acquiring right of way. When a boat acquires right of way, she should give the other boat room to keep clear. So the blue was an astern boat under rule 12 originally, and then acquired right of way. So at that point, she is the right of way boat, she's the leeward boat, but she must give yellow, green, and even grey room to keep clear. So that's the acquiring right of way. This happens so much, doesn't it? We see this on so many start lines. And it always intrigues me how noisy it is down at the blue-yellow end, when actually blue and yellow, they're bound by the 2 boats above them, you know, and really poor old yellow and green can't do anything until grey starts going. And blue certainly can't stand there driving into those any more than she is doing there.
Probably not at this point, because grey has got to be given room to keep clear, which is sort of 3 times the room that yellow would have had.
At the point that blue became the leeward boat and said, I want it to come up, yellow has to pass it to green, green has to pass it to grey, and grey has to start moving.
Grey doesn't respond.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And that's often misunderstood. You know, we get protests a lot saying, well, I was the blue boat and nothing happened. And well, in the end of the day, what could the yellow have done at this point? And probably the gun will have gone off and the best course would have been to sail off anyway, fast rather than luffing each other. All right. Good questions. Good points. Anyone at home? No? Okay. Next slide.
Yes, next slide. Okay, so we now moved on to rule 17, which all of you will remember is that if a leeward boat establishes an overlap within 2 boat lengths of the windward boat, she must not sail above her proper course. You all remember that anyway. Now, the key point before the start is that before the starting signal, there is no proper course. So rule 17, the thing about not sailing above your proper course, doesn't apply before the starting signal. But so the leeward boat can luff as high as she likes. But as soon as the starting signal sounds, the leeward boat has got to be on her proper course. Now in practice, that means that the leeward boat has got to have their wits about them, because if they sail above their proper course, even for a couple of seconds after the starting signal, they've then broken rule 17. Now let's have a look at an example.
yeah, good question.
Okay, well, the proper course is the course a boat would have sailed in the absence of any other boat to get round the course as quickly as possible. So on a windward start, the proper course is normally the close haul course. If it's a reaching or running start, the proper course is usually very closely approximating towards going to the first mark. Maybe if there's tide or something, then the proper course may have to take that into account. But on a windward start, the proper course is definitely a close haul course. Not head to wind, no.
I think I see some people actually do have rule books in front of them. And one thing you'll find in your rule book at the very beginning is the definitions. And I say this every time I do a lecture, the definitions are king. If you need to know anything else, get yourself into the definitions, the very beginning, and in there's the proper course definition and the keep clear definition. Should we go on?
Oh, wait a minute, no, there's that example.
There we go.
Okay.
Is that it? There we go.
So who wants to, now you know all about rule 17 before the start. Who wants to comment on what happened here?
Just for those of you who might not be able to read it, at the stern of boat 4, the blue boat, it says bang, signifying the gun went off at that point. The gun went off as the blue boat was at boat 4. Does that help?
Were any rules broken? Okay, but if blue had not borne away at the bang point, at point 4, then blue would then be breaking rule 17 and could be protested. You can see at the bottom there that blue was clearly clear astern of yellow in the position 1, which is cut off in the slide. So if you come in from astern and you establish an overlap to leeward, then you can take the other boat up, but you've got to be down on your proper course when the gun goes. Okay. Right, no words. Okay, there's a group of rules, which is rules 18, 19, and 20, which are rules of marks and obstructions. These do not apply when boats are approaching the line to start. We should just try and define what that means. That means that boats are on their final tack to the start. So they're not approaching the line to start if they have got a tack to start. But if they have already tacked and now going for the line, then they're approaching the line to start. The marks and obstruction rules do not apply in those circumstances. So basically what it means is two things: you don't get room at the committee boat, even though the committee boats are marked, you can't call for marked room at the committee boat. And we'll talk about some of the implications of that in a minute. And at the pin end boat, and particularly in the coming weekend, when the pin end is a boat rather than a mark, the pin end boat is an obstruction, and you can't call for room to tack at the pin end mark boat. You have basically put yourself in a hole if you're stuck and about to hit the pin end mark boat. We'll have an example of what happens in a moment. Okay. Okay, so there's not a lot to discuss there because it's sort of on the slide, but does anybody have any comments or want to say anything about it?
So yellow has run away all the way and blue no rights. No rights.
Blue has no rights to go squeeze between yellow and the committee boat, but under Rule 14, yellow has to avoid a collision. So yellow's proper course of action is to bear away and protest. If yellow insists on holding it right away and blue hits yellow and the committee boat, then both boats will be disqualified. Blue would protest that.
Well, I think yellow could still be in the firing line if blue said, I didn't want to hit two boats, and to be honest, her sailing boat looks more expensive than a committee boat. I chose that one as my least worst option. But for sure, yellow has to probably make a bit of space here, even though blue had no room. And again, it's another term which I don't like, but obviously we all use it. We'd start thinking this was a barging situation. She barged her way in there. But now, different thing, while I'm on here, it might come up in another slide, I'm not sure. If yellow had someone below her, that would change things.
But we don't have a slide that shows that. That's getting, we could be here all night if we had every possible.
Yellow nothing to close the door.
Wait a minute, that's the next one. You're ahead of us. So let's go to the next one.
Sometimes it's a click and sometimes it's a button.
Okay, so who wants to comment on this one? I think I've said it all on the slide actually, which is a bit of a mistake. Okay, so what happened here was that yellow had left room for blue to get between yellow and the committee boat. And as blue started past the committee boat, then yellow left, and blue hit the committee boat and yellow. So yellow was a right-of-way boat altering course and not giving room to the keep clear boat to keep clear. And yellow broke 14 as well. Yeah, well, there were two bangs. It was yellow hit blue and blue hit the committee boat.
Start going.
Oh, doesn't matter.
No, but the yellow boat has to hold its proper course.
It does. So it could break Rule 17 as well, you're saying. Yeah.
The main key here is at position 1, it was fair game for blue to go there, right? There was plenty of space between the committee boat and yellow's projected path. I think it was fair game. But then, just like I said before, checkmate, yellow luffed up and slammed the door on blue's fingers, and that's not allowed in fleet racing.
So, this is not really barging. If yellow leaves room for blue to go in, then blue is entitled to room, and yellow can't squeeze her out at this late stage. But let's just go on to the next one.
Good.
Oh, 2. Okay. So here, yellow has done the smart thing. So who wants to comment on it?
Yellow is enough before the guy's gone, so the right to force blue up.
Nothing to do with the gun. Yellow left while blue still had the opportunity to luff up and go the wrong side of the committee boat. So blue could keep clear.
Yeah, but before the gun, yellow luff up as far as it likes without
Yes,
breaking any rules.
well, we don't know how the overlap was established. If blue came in on the reach above yellow, then Rule 17 doesn't apply. 17 only applies when the leeward boat establishes the overlap from clear astern. So can you shout a bit louder?
This is
Yeah. I mean, let's imagine the question was, does this apply before the start? Let's imagine this is, say, 20 seconds before the gun, and they're both coming in. Yellow's feeling pretty happy with herself. Blue's thinking, I'm going to have a look. And Yellow says, well, I'm going to make sure you're not getting in there. But the key is that Yellow does it early enough that Blue can get safely away. Yeah. If Yellow had left it too late, Yellow breaks a rule.
So we're back to the previous situation.
But
Yellow leaves it until Blue can't avoid the committee vote.
so that's the key, is if you're going to shut the door on someone, get that door closed so that they don't actually get their fingers jammed in it. Close it before the committee vote. So, and yes, yeah, because Yellow is just above ley line there in the dangerous place.
But anyway, as I say, you could go forever with these situations. We have to simplify it, or we'll be here all night.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Thanks.
Okay, so here is at the pin end, and the pin end is not a mark. The pin end is an obstruction. Just an aside here, and it's the definition of an obstruction is an object that a boat, when they are one boat length away from it, has to make a significant change of course to avoid it. So a round buoy in the water is not regarded as an obstruction, because the boat would not have to make a significant change of course to avoid it. Might have to change course, but the change wouldn't be significant. But if the pin end is a marked boat, then it's probable that it's big enough for the boat to have to make a significant change of course. So in this case, the pin end boat is an obstruction to Blue. Normally, under normal rules, if this was out in the after the start, then Blue would be entitled to call for room to tack under Rule 20. But because it's before the start, Rule 20 doesn't apply. So, so Blue has no rights to call for tack. So what happened here is that Blue had to tack anyway to avoid piling into the marked boat. Yellow correctly responded by tacking to avoid the collision, and Yellow protested and would win the protest.
And that's quite straightforward, that one. Any questions, any comments? No.
Okay, so now we have two situations, which I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, because I hope we have two screens, but we don't. So one is the position of the fleet at 5 seconds to the starting signal, and the next one is the position of the fleet at the starting signal. And there's quite a lot going on, so you might want to have a look at it and see what situations you can see as developing, and then we'll talk about the situations.
If you want to move, it's got to keep our social distancing. But
has anybody got any questions about any position on the screen?
well, this guy down the left. Yeah, it's doing quite well, right?
Well, that's a situation, that was our first one. Our second one of port and starboard, wasn't it? The blue boat cannot rough up to
The purple, can't, yeah. Oh, we're talking about this you remember from one of the slides early on, between turquoise M and purple L. So turquoise is doing quite good, and hopefully this boat doesn't luff her out of it like she did earlier. Let's have a talk about the yellow and blue at this end. It's probably the freshest in our mind. Anyone want to comment between yellow here coming on screen and blue? Okay, so at this position, yellow can still tack away. And if she does, then it's all good and everyone's happy, right?
Okay, anybody got any views about C and D?
C and D are these two here. Is C entitled to ask for room to tack? Why not?
Why not?
But the,
Okay, it's a tricky question because this is rule 20 that C calls for room to tack. Now we said rule 20 doesn't apply before the start when boats are approaching the line to start, but they're not approaching the line to start because they're not on the starting tack. So once they've completed the tack, they'd be approaching. But in this particular diagram, they're not approaching the line to start. So C is entitled to call D to tack, to give C room to tack. If C decides to go below the yellow and blue boats, then C must allow room for D to go there as well.
what about this boat is H and this boat is I? This sort of aquamarine or whatever it is, I'm not good with colors, is H and I. How about these two boats? Presuming they're all moving about the same speed.
Maybe go on to the next slide
Let's have
and
a
see
look.
what happens next, and then we can come back.
Ah, there we go.
Right. So this is at the starting signal.
Okay. Why is blue is protesting? Okay, we go back 5 seconds before. The question is, why is blue, the B, protesting at the start? Who's she protesting? I think so, right? So blue had to bear away to let yellow in. Yellow didn't have room. She's a windward boat. She should have gone 5 seconds before, but she squeezed herself in. So blue says protest. And it becomes dangerous between the blue and the green. So slap the back of the hand of yellow. What about say, for example, these two? 5 seconds before they're like that, at the start signal. Okay.
Well, there's something else.
So, yeah, I think that's what's going on, isn't it? Let me go back here, and she's a clear stern boat. She obviously gains an overlap to leeward. And at the start signal, she's calling this guy up. We just remembered, if you gain an overlap to leeward, then rule 17 applies, and at the start signal, you should be doing what? Bearing down to your fast proper course. So the red boat shouts rule 17, and maybe the red boat will protest. But remember, the red boat is still a windward boat. So what must red be doing as well as shouting protest? She must be keeping clear, yeah? And that's one of those, a bit like 11-16, it's one where both boats have an obligation, and sometimes both boats will be disqualified in the room. The windward boat didn't keep clear, and the blue boat sailed above her proper course. Both of you go home.
So that's also a situation like you were demonstrating if they turned up, they would.
Absolutely. So again, it would come down to the fact whether that hook, and sometimes we call that a hook, whether that hook was too close.
If the red boat couldn't keep clear, then he's okay. As long as he tried.
Yeah. So the leeward hook, if you're ever going to do a leeward hook, it's a great move, but you do have to give, remember the rule 15, the other boat room to keep clear. So it could have been that. Good point. Any more that we want to discuss on this? I did talk about the this guy at the end here. Yeah. Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Well, if you look at the way the diagram is drawn, the left-hand boat M, and I'm not going to try to do the colours either, was clearing the other boat 5 seconds before the start. If they continued at the same speed, there would be no collision. So it's because the second boat luffed up that they got themselves into a potential collision situation.
So it's the second boat not on its proper course.
Well, he's a right-of-way boat changing course, not giving the other boat room to keep clear.
Just reminding everyone at home that we're talking about these two boats on the left here. I just want to expand a little bit on that definition of keeping clear. The first part of the definition of keeping clear says, the boat keeps clear by letting the other boat sail her course. And that's the course she's on. So in this situation, if the dark purple boat had sailed the course she was on and didn't have to take any avoiding action, then the light blue has kept clear. The dark purple boat doesn't get entitlement to right away on a course she may sail in a couple of seconds. It's the course she's on at the moment. Do you see what I mean? So the key here between the dark purple and the light blue is that M, the light blue, was keeping clear at this point. She'd done what she needed to do. The dark purple starts shouting and yelling, but she's changed her course. So M had kept clear of the first course she was on. Purple had changed her course, I think.
I think the lesson from this is that at the start, the rules are changing quite frequently as a position between the boats change, and you really have got to know the rules and assess where you are relative to the other boats. Particularly if you want to get to and start in the front row, you've got to know where you are and what your rights are. Okay, well, those are all the situations for an upwind start, which in many ways is a lot simpler. How are we doing for time? Right.
We're burning our candle.
Right, we're burning our time, yeah. So we'll have to move on a bit quicker. Downwind starts are a lot more complicated. So we'll have to try to get through quickly. The rules are basically exactly the same. The only thing I'd say here is that a rule which very seldom gets broken on an upwind start, which is rule 12, happens a lot downwind, because the boats which are astern usually are blanketing the boats in front, so the boats astern are going faster, and the rules say that a boat astern on the same tack must keep clear of a boat in front of them. So rule 12 suddenly becomes important in a downwind start. The other ones remain exactly the same. So let's just try and get through them. Okay, so here's two snapshots of boats. I'm going to talk through these a bit to get us through in time. four boats running downwind towards the start. The leeward of the boat luffs up, and he's got every right to do that as long as he gives the other boats room to keep clear. Now the poor blue boat at the right-hand end is, as use a technical term, he's stuffed because he's got to luff up. He's going to miss the mark. So he says, what about me? Well, sorry, mate, you had it. But the four boats on the right must all be given room to keep clear by the boat that's altering course and luffing up. Okay, let's move on. Now this is a bit more interesting. This time, foreseeing what's happened, the blue boat has jibed onto starboard. So now the blue boat is the right-of-way boat over all the other boats in the fleet. So who wants to comment on this? Ben, do you want to comment on it?
I'd say that now the starboard boat, the blue boat, is the right of way. All the others are on port. We've got a Rule 10 situation. If the blue boat has given red, grey, green, and yellow room to start keeping clear, then that's fine. They all have to do it. I think running downwind, depending on the winds, two could probably jibe. Well, maybe not. Maybe two's boom would hit blue, right? If she jibed, what do we think? So maybe blue's broken Rule 15.
Blue's got to be careful because Rule 15 applies, but maybe the jibe took place just a little bit between the two positions where there was room for red to jibe, which passes responsibility down the line for the other boats to respond.
Yeah.
They would all have to
they
jibe.
would all have to jibe out and go off on starboard.
If Trent jumps, his boom doesn't pass, you just make sure that his boom doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if blue has checkmated red, then blue's broken the rule. If red can jibe and ask the other boats to jibe above her, then they should do that.
Okay.
Excellent.
Next one. Okay, well, this is a situation where these are not two positions. These are separate sets of boats. So the boats astern are taking the wind of the boats in front. And so they're likely to be catching the boats in front up, but they're all on the same tack. So the boats astern have got to keep clear of the boats ahead. Even if they're going faster, they mustn't run into them. Any comments? Okay, let's have the next one. Okay, so who wants to comment on this?
Again, that speech bubble says bang. Yeah. Yeah.
But is the blue boat on proper course?
Well, you probably can't see the arrow, but the arrow says to next mark. So that's the proper course. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's even, it's questionable, isn't it, whether Rule 17 actually does apply. Because she became leeward boat in the jibe, not from clear astern. But at least they're both going towards the first mark at their gun. So I'd say no rule broken here. Yep.
No contact, no rule broken.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, let's have a look at the next one. Now, who wants to comment on this one?
Blue says, I'm leeward boat, up, up. And yellow says, you can't come in there. Still get people joining, which is great.
Any comments?
I wonder if anyone at home has a comment on that one.
Position 1.
Yeah. Any other comments? Too late for blue? Okay. Well, what's the right of way rule going on here? Windward boat, keep clear, and the yellow is the windward boat. So let's say at number 1, yellow can see there's going to be a collision course going on, but doesn't need water because he's right away. So in the upwind, when people barge, it's because the one closest to the committee boat doesn't have right of way and is squeezing in here. But in this situation, blue has the right of way, yellow should keep clear. So blue doesn't even need to call for water, just needs to say up, up, up.
It's an interesting situation, isn't it? Because you get used to the no barging rule for windward starts, and this sort of turns it completely on its head. The blue boat here has right of way and absolutely every right to go in there.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting when it goes upside down. So I'd say yellow, if yellow didn't get out of there, yellow's broken rule 11. Agree? Yep.
Right, now we have a more complicated situation. So I think you'll have to take this step by step and look at particular bits of it. So who wants to start the ball rolling by talking about any of the potential contact points? Well, let me start it. What does anybody think about the boats on the right-hand side?
B, that's a very dark blue, but it's, yeah. Ten seconds ago, yeah.
Doesn't have to.
If you were blue, what would you be considering? That's another way to ask the question. We got people saying blue should probably go behind yellow. I think that's probably a good course of action. Yeah.
Well, we might go on to the next slide and see what happens, and then come back to look at the rest of the fleet. Okay. So that's blue, what happens.
Blue does go behind. That's a good thing.
And one more. We'll see what happens in the final. So there we go. So blue did go behind him, and then jibed and went off across the line. So blue's okay. So let's go back again and see what. Do we want to follow yellow and see what yellow does in the second of the slides? So go to the second slide then. Right. So what's happening here?
Yellow is all the same type as green and orange and the other yellow. So is overlapped.
Yeah. So the yellow boat here is starboard boat still. These boats have either jibed, I can't remember what happened, but they are also starboard boats. But what's their relation to the yellow? They're windward boats. Yeah. So C This orange and this guy here, this green, are windward boats, so they have to keep clear of yellow. But look at this guy here coming in. He's on port. Well, he's got an obligation with these two anyway. But he probably needs to jibe to keep the obligation there, but he has to give these guys room as well. So it's all getting pretty cramped.
So do you want to go to the next one and see what they did?
There we go. So orange decides to bail out of that. Probably the right thing. Yellow keeps on coming across, causing havoc. maybe a boom went over, but anyway, whatever. But the point is that these guys, this E, remember he was on port, did actually jibe, F jibed, G jibed. So they all ended up jibing, probably because yellow, right at the beginning, had those starboard rights.
So yellow has right of way throughout, but he's also got the responsibility to avoid a collision. I think yellow's in imminent. Well, you do get people who do that. He's not going anywhere near the course, is he? No, because they're not overlapped. He hasn't established an overlap to leeward within two boat lengths.
After the gun bit, it's only one specific rule, which is rule 17 called proper course. Most of the other time, the gun doesn't matter. Just while we're here, just very quickly, I know we're getting on, but these two, the pink and the red, 10 seconds out, there's going to be an issue coming up, eh?
Well, you've got 4 boats there, so I think you need to look at all 4 of them.
Okay, well, this guy and this guy, they're all sort of coming towards this end.
Well, one of them's on starboard. So at the moment, the left-hand boat is the leeward of those 3 port boats. He's not altered course. He's entitled to carry on, but he's going to run into trouble because of the starboard boat that's in the middle there. So let's go on to the next. Now they're getting into a mess here. So
You got one more? Is there one more? No.
there is one more, yeah.
Oh. Mayhem.
So the light blue boat jibed, held his boom in so he didn't hit the red boat, and he somehow squeezed around the mark, and the other 2 guys went behind him.
I'm not going to say which fleet in Hong Kong this looks like. There's a couple, I think.
The red boat touched the
Possibly. So let's just say red did touch turquoise. What would you say there? Well, let's look at red and turquoise. Did red hold her course from this position, or did she change course? As a right-of-way boat, if you change course, what must you do? Give the other one room. So do we think red gave turquoise any room after she changed course as a right-of-way boat? Probably not. So red's probably looking at a slap on the hand.
Let's go on to the next one because it gets more interesting. But now turquoise is jibed, but turquoise has become right-of-way boat. And in becoming right-of-way boat, he's got to give room under 15 for the red boat to keep clear. So even though turquoise boat looks as though he's in a really terrible situation in that position, he's actually made it worse for himself by jibing onto starboard, because he's now become a right-of-way boat just acquiring right-of-way.
I think there's we could talk for ages on this, couldn't we?
We could.
Yeah.
We were going to give this to the Hong Kong judges to try and work out all the rules that apply. Maybe we should still do that then.
I think one thing that's clear from this is at the start line, as Tom said, you've got to be super alert and act early and start formulating the game plan early, right? Because way early on here, these boats could have avoided what could be a lot of damage and disappointment. Leaving it down to here, they've almost checkmated themselves. And another thing I would say is that rule 14 says boats shall avoid contact. One of the cases says that a way to avoid contact is by having a proper lookout on your boat. Yeah, during the start period, you've got to be really looking out, and that may mean putting someone on your bow. And I don't have much sympathy for a boat that crashes and there was no one on the bow if it was a long enough boat to do that. Do you see what I mean?
It's no excuse to say I didn't see him. In fact, that you've condemned yourself out of your own mouth if you say you didn't see the right away boat.
So I think the next slides are the next ones are rule 42. So
yeah, we finished the positions. You'll be pleased to hear because it's 8:20. So
yeah.
Okay, so let's go on. Does anybody got any questions about the positional rules before the start? Because then now we're going to go and talk about something else.
Yeah. Exactly. Anticipate and no checkmate. No checkmate yourself, right? Leave yourself an open door.
So it is difficult, and you really have to have your wits about it. Okay, let's talk about illegal propulsion. Now, this was really aimed at the dinghy sailors, and hopefully some of them are online listening to us. So what I would say is that in a dinghy race, the judges will be at the start and they're watching for people breaking Rule 42. And we've all been doing it long enough to know exactly what boats are going to do to try to gain an advantage, to try to by illegal propulsion. And we know all the tricks, so we're watching it. So Rule 42 basically says you may only propel the boat through the action of the wind and the waves. You can't do it by rowing or pumping the sails or sculling or anything else which causes the boat to go faster. So the Rule 42 judges are watching for actions which a boat is doing which makes it go faster. So we'll deal with a few things. So the first obvious thing is that for keel boats is you better make sure you're out of gear at the prep signal. It is allowable to get up speed at the prep signal and then to coast into the start line if the wind is very light. There's a case on that, that's allowable. You better have the engine out of gear at the prep signal. Now, we'll deal with one or two of the things that dinghies typically do, but maybe other people could do as well. One of the things which happens often is that a boat like a laser will be, as they come into the start, they'll be bearing the wave lower close haul course with the boat heeling over, and just before the starting signal, they'll do a big height, pull the boat upright and pull the sail in and give themselves an almighty squirt forward. Now, we'll be watching that pretty closely because it's a sort of grey area. You are allowed to do that as long as you don't propel the boat faster than you would otherwise be doing. So we'll be watching for any boat that does that and pops out at the front of the row. So if you see a row of boats and they're all lined up at the start and one of them pumps and is suddenly a boat length ahead of the others, then he's a candidate to be penalized.
If you're tacking, can you roll tack?
You can roll tack. Yep,
Is that allowed?
that's allowed. Yep. When you're tacking, you can roll tack. You're not allowed to tack more frequently than the tactics require. So if you, particularly with boats like an Oppie, which can go quite fast out of the tack, you'll sometimes see a boat which is tacking often and gaining quite a lot of distance because they've done a roll tack or one or two of the other things that Oppies do in the tack and get speed up out of the tack. But that's definitely breaking the rule. Another thing that happens a lot just after the start is body pumping, where particularly in a boat like a laser, the guy will be, or girl will be bouncing up and down on the windward gunwale, and the boat will be flicking, the sail will be flicking, and they get increased propulsion from that. So we'll be watching that. Sculling is another illegal action. If the boat is above close hauled, then you're allowed to scull to bring the boat down to a close hauled course. But once you're on a close hauled course, then you have to stop sculling. And again, with the Oppies are one of the worst offenders here, because the Oppie has a very big rudder, and sculling an Oppie can make it go really, really pretty quickly. The bottom one there is you can back the mainsail and scull and basically hold your position or go sideways, and that is also considered to be a Rule 42 infringement. So I know this was about the start, but we wanted to give some guidance for the sailors at the weekend, if anybody's watching, about what we're watching for. So upwind, the major infringements are pumping, either pumping by pulling the sails in and releasing them, or body rocking to make the boat rock. As I say, body pumping, jumping up and down on the side of the boat, or getting your bottom up and down on the side of the boat. Ouching is where in a dinghy you bring your weight back in the boat and then move it forward quickly and stop. And that has the effect of moving the boat forward quite dramatically. So ouching is something we watch for. Unnecessary tacking, which is what Mark has mentioned, and sculling.
Nice spelling.
Sorry?
Nice spelling.
Downwind, rolling without there being waves. Let me explain this. You're allowed to roll the boat to steer in the presence of waves if you're rolling the boat to steer to the face of a wave, so that you get advantage from the wave. But in flat water, you're not allowed to roll the boat for steering, and you're certainly not allowed to roll the boat if the boat is going straight. We very often see at the last mark in a dinghy race where they do a windward, a leeward leg, then round the bottom mark, and then across on a short reach to the finish. We very often see some active pumping at the last mark to try to get an overlap on somebody else at the mark. So we watch for that. And in general, if one boat is going faster than another, downwind, we're going to be watching to see if we can work out why they're going faster. I mean, they may just be better sailors, but very often there is a subtle movement which is causing the boat to go faster. I think that's us, Ben.
Pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, so summary, you can make major gains or losses at the start. Very often it's impossible to get back in a closely contested fleet if you've made a lousy start. So you really have to know the rules and get to the front at the start. The boats are very close together and the rules happen very quickly, so you must know them well. And you can definitely spoil the race for others if you foul at the start. So rule 2 may come into play, or even worse, if it's a deliberate foul. So I guess that's us, Ben.
Yeah. No,
Questions?
any questions? So for the people at home, that's all the slides we have. We'll just see if anyone has any questions that they want to put forward. If not, no questions, call it a day.
Can we get any of these slides?
Yes.
Okay, I believe the slideshow it is recording this presentation. So in some form or another, it will be made available, either this presentation or the slides of the presentation will be made available.
The objective is that all the rules presentations we give are now given under the auspices of HKSF. And so the way this works is an HKSF presentation hosted by HebeHaven. And they're open to anybody from any club in Hong Kong to attend, either in person or on Zoom. And our objective, and we're just getting around to sorting it out, is that all the slides and the presentations will be available in a library on the HKSF website. So if you can't get them directly from HebeHaven, you should, once we've got it sorted out, be able to get them from the HKSF website. We want to build up a library of presentations as we go forward, so we cover all the aspects of the rules.
Well, before you go, I just want to